This is Matthew Cratter from Trader University, and today I want to answer the question, will Bitcoin kill gold? If you're interested in learning how to make money in both bull and bear markets, or you just want to see what I'm trading or investing in, be sure to hit that subscribe button. So my thesis is that gold is basically an inferior money technology. It's the best thing we've had for a while until Bitcoin came along. And there's this tendency for better technology to replace older, worse technology. So what I'm going to argue is that gold is eventually going to be demonetized. It's going to lose its value as money. It will still be valuable as an industrial metal, but it will no longer function as money. And that the real future for both medium of exchange, unit of account, and store of value, which are the three functions of money, will be some form of software, probably Bitcoin. Now, people underestimate how quickly technology can change things, even though we've been seeing it over our lifetimes. Here's this famous article from Newsweek from 1995, where Clifford Stoll argues that the internet's going to fail. It's not really going to change anything. And again, this was just 25 years ago. He was arguing that no online database will ever replace your daily newspaper. No computer network will ever change the way things work. So, and obviously he's a smart guy too, so it's very easy to be an expert and still get these things wrong. But if we just step back, if we pretend we're from outer space, we're an alien, and we look at gold as a money technology versus Bitcoin as a money technology, one of the first things we notice is that gold is very difficult to move and to store. This is one reason I don't own physical gold, because I'm a public figure. I don't really want to trust a bank with it, and I don't want to have it in my basement. I don't want people coming by my house and trying to take it. This is the problem with gold. Gold storage is sort of a honeypot that attracts predators. And this was a problem. This has been a problem throughout recorded history, particularly in the 19th century. And so what banks did, especially once the telegraph came along and once trains came along, is they would keep all the gold in one place. Depositors would put their gold in a bank. One bank would put their gold with a bigger bank, and so you got these collections, these giant collections, storage facilities of gold. And then what was actually really traded was just a form of paper money, early gold certificates, which are really just gold IOUs. This was much safer than sticking the gold on trains or sticking it on the famous Wells Fargo stagecoach, which was used to transport gold. The real problem with centralized gold reserves, and what a lot of gold bugs don't really ever address, is that the one problem with gold is that most of it is now owned by central banks, owned by governments. And this was simply a historical inevitability, because the gold was centralized, and then it became very easy for various governments to take over those storage facilities, whether they're banks or central banks or otherwise storage facilities. Gold is very difficult to move, as we said. Here's a story from a couple years ago about how Germany decided to take back its gold. It was storing it in New York and Paris. This was kind of a relic of the Cold War. In case the Soviet Union invaded Germany, it didn't want its gold getting stolen, so it stored it in Paris and New York. By 2013, Germany was no longer worried about then Russia stealing its gold, and so it decided to take its gold back. And this is a problem with gold. It was only $31 billion worth of gold, which is not a lot of money for governments. It's not even a lot of money for gold. It took 4 years, even in the 21st century, to move this gold, to bring it from Paris and New York back to Germany. So this is a very primitive technology. The stagecoach was probably faster than moving gold these days. This is an example of one of those gold certificates I was telling you about. This one, it looks like was issued by the U.S. government, and this is a piece of paper that says this piece of paper is exchangeable for actual gold coins. Now, I did another video about this, but in 1933, basically the U.S. government stole all of its gold from its citizens. It made it illegal to hold gold, and you could obviously still do it illegally, but a lot of people ended up turning over their gold. The U.S. dollar was then devalued, and all this gold was stuck in Fort Knox. So this idea of governments stealing their citizens' gold, it's not just a conspiracy theory. It actually happened in, quote unquote, one of the freest countries in the world, in the United States, in 1932. 3. This is still happening now. This was a story I saw about a week ago about the Venezuelan government trying to get access to its gold, which was being stored, I suppose, physically in the UK at the Bank of England, which is the central bank. I'm not a fan necessarily of Maduro, but this is a little bit unbelievable that one cannot take what one owns. And this is a problem with gold. If you're sitting in Venezuela and all your gold's in England and some judge decides that you can't get it back, then you're in trouble. So again, not meant to be an apologist for Maduro or anything, just an example of what a poor form of money gold can be, especially when you really need that gold. Is the bank going to let you have it, whether you're just a little guy or whether you're the president of a government that people decide they don't like? This was another version of the same story. You probably also saw this from a week ago. There was a jeweler that was borrowing money in China by the name of King Gold. You can see what's happened to their stock. This is a chart of King Gold Jewelry. KGJI is the ticker. Basically, they borrowed $2 billion worth of cash, and the collateral was gold that turned out not to actually be gold. It was I think copper bars that had sort of a gold plating. This is one problem with gold. It's very difficult to verify, and you can see that even very smart 21st century banks and lenders got in trouble. But there's a practical problem. If you have billions of dollars worth of gold, the only real way to know that it's gold is to melt it down and to do various chemical tests on it. This is it's good to trust, but it's also much better to verify. The process of testing gold is called assaying. Looks like there are two ways to do it. The X-ray fluorescence method is not, this article says, is not as reliable. So the real way you need as I understand, is you need a giant melting pot. Different metals melt at different levels, and gold and silver and copper all have their different temperatures that they melt at. So you need some real technical knowledge here. You need a giant pot. And how in the world are you going to do this for $2 billion worth of gold? I can't remember how much it said this weighed, but you're talking a lot of gold, and gold is 83 tons of gold bars. How are you going to melt that down in a big pot? So again, this is sort of an outdated technology. This is like using a paper newspaper and trying to search through it instead of using a digital online paper. By contrast, it's very easy to verify and validate that the Bitcoin you own is real Bitcoin. You can run a full node at your house, and also if you control your private keys, if you're not storing your Bitcoin on an exchange, you can be sure that you have real Bitcoin. Anyone can do this. You don't need specialized knowledge. You don't need a big cauldron in your basement, and you don't need chemical knowledge. The next thing I would say is that gold is not as rare as it would appear to be. The solar system is full of gold. This is an asteroid that's between Mars and Jupiter. It's called asteroid Psyche 16 that has enough gold at current prices to worth about 700 quintillion. So that's the next number up from trillion, quadrillion, quintillion. Obviously, if all this gold made its way to Earth, the scarcity of gold would be in jeopardy, and the gold would not be worth as much. So I've talked about this a little bit before, what space mining is going to do to gold, and I would not underestimate how close we are to this. I think, especially with the advances that Musk is doing at SpaceX, this could be a lot closer, and Jeff Bezos is doing obviously as well. This could be a lot closer than people believe. But I think the other side of the story too, the other reminder, is that it's just very difficult to move gold around in space. So as we become a space civilization, we're going to have the same problem that we've always had with banks and central banks, where the gold is really going to have to be stored on Earth or in various centralized locations throughout the universe or throughout the solar system. And you're really going to just have to trust people that the gold is there. You're going to have the modern equivalent of those gold certificates. So gold is very heavy. It's obviously difficult to move heavy things around to get them out of the gravitational pull of a planet. So gold, space travel just shows how ridiculous gold is as a form of money. And it's going to lead to the same centralization problems that we had in the 19th century, where we ended up really having the creation of fiat money, just paper money that could be printed and not really backed by gold. By contrast, Bitcoin is much more scarce than gold. There are only 21 million Bitcoins. This is all that there will ever be. There's a huge amount of gold in the solar system, as we said. But Bitcoin is truly scarce. Also, Bitcoin is basically infinitely divisible. Right now it's divisible to 1 Bitcoin is equal to 100 million satoshis. So no matter how much Bitcoin goes up, eventually if things work, 1 satoshi will be equal to $1. Even then, it's very easy to change the software to make each Bitcoin more divisible if we need to. That's still a long way off. But imagine trying to divide a gold bar or a gold coin. It's very, very difficult. And this is one reason silver coins were used. They were used for sort of small denominations. And then the gold bricks, gold bullion, or gold coins were used for larger denominations. But then you had this whole problem with the different supply-demand dynamics of gold versus silver, and the conversion rate between gold and silver. So Bitcoin makes this much easier. This is what millennials and Gen Z are interested in. They're not interested in bars of gold. And this is a much more practical. We live in a digital economy, a digital world. We're never going to go back to a purely physical economy. And so Bitcoin makes a lot more sense given its divisibility. Now, as we said, gold is an inferior money technology. Better technology is going to replace the old technology in the same way that gold coins replaced iron coins. There's also this distinction of hard money and soft money, which I'm not really going to go into here. But we had this example where the Native Americans used to use seashells as money, and then the Europeans discovered this, and they decided to, using their technology of the time, to get huge boatloads of seashells and to buy up the U.S. this way. And so people who store their wealth in money that has a huge supply that's not as scarce, such like gold will eventually be not very scarce, their purchasing power and their wealth erodes over time, and the advantage accrues to those who store their wealth in scarce assets, which was gold. Gold is obviously much more scarce than iron or aluminum or copper, and it's definitely more scarce than seashells. But now we have something that is even more scarce as measured by stock to flow and as measured by absolute supply. So there is gold everywhere in the universe. Gold is expensive to move around. And this really suggests that Bitcoin at every level is just a better technology than gold. It's easier to store. You don't need guns to store it. You don't need armed guards or big walls. You can store your private key in your head if you need to. If you need to leave the country, try leaving the country with $1 million worth of gold bars. It's not going to work, but you can leave whatever country you're in very easily with $1 million worth of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's easier to subdivide into satoshis, much more difficult, as we said, to divide a gold bar. Bitcoin's easier to send over long distances. I could send it to various countries around the world, and much faster than a wire transfer, much safer. And you just can't do this with gold, as we saw with the German example. Especially, I mean, maybe you can travel across a border with a few gold coins in your pocket. This is not going to last you. This is not going to be lifetime savings or anything like that. And gold is also easier to verify. Bitcoin is easier to verify. You don't need a cauldron. You don't need to melt it down. And so ultimately, this is the real advantage that Bitcoin has, is it's unconfiscatable if you know how to use it. And it's just like learning to use the internet or a computer. If you grew up with it, it's very easy. If you're over the age of 40 or 50, there might be a little bit of a learning curve, but I can guarantee you that if you have young kids, Bitcoin will be very intuitive. If they can use TikTok, they can use Bitcoin. And so ultimately, Bitcoin is unconfiscatable if you're smart in how you use it, and so it cannot be stolen from you by a government. Ultimately, someone could come to your house, the government could come to your house and point a gun at your head and make you give up your private key. So it's not perfect, but it's definitely a much better technological solution than gold. And as we said, Bitcoin is much more scarce than gold. If you look at the stock to flow, which is just how much the existing inventories are compared to how much gold is mined every year or how much Bitcoin is mined every year, Bitcoin will soon be more scarce than gold. Certainly after the next halving in 2024, there's a lot of gold in the solar system. There's only 21 million Bitcoin. And I forget how many millionaires there are worldwide. I want to say there are 40 or 50 million millionaires worldwide. So not even enough Bitcoin for everyone to have, every millionaire to have 2 or 3 Bitcoin. So this is very, very scarce asset. And it's ultimately just a better technology, better money technology than gold. Please hit that subscribe and like button if you found this video helpful. Let me know your questions and comments in the comments section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.